Are some people destined to be single? If you've asked yourself this question's been keeping you up at night, or you found yourself ruminating on this question, haven't got answers, hang around because this video is going to help you. Quick caveat, if I jump at some point, it's possibly because a snake has come after me. Yes, I was just having a nice experience looking at the water, and then suddenly I saw a snake, took my eye off it for a second, and I can no longer see it. So that's going to bring my aliveness into this video. So let's get into this topic because I get asked this a lot. And look, if this is something that you're sitting with and it's a question that's caused confusion, doubt, pain, disappointment, resignation, longing, you're not alone. I think a lot of us have asked ourselves, at least at times in our lives, questions like this. And probably if you're asking this question and it's painful for you, it's because you don't want to believe that you're destined to be single, but perhaps you feel like you're stuck in singleness. So hang around. I think I've got some stuff that might help you. Part of the opportunity that exists in singleness, particularly if you don't want to be single, is actually to become less attached to the idea that your life has to look a certain way. So that might be some tough medicine right off the bat, but it's almost asking the question, like, what lets you know that you shouldn't be single? What lets you know that in this period of your life, singleness isn't a better condition for you, right? At our best, we might find that there are gifts in both singleness and togetherness, right? Some of the gifts of singleness can include freedom, autonomy, getting to know ourselves better, being able to energize other parts of our lives, working on difficult patterns that maybe have come up in different or multiple relationships, and that we actually can sometimes see them more clearly when we're on our own. Wanting to know whether you're going to be destined to be single in some ways is wanting to know your future, right? And we all want to do that at times. Gosh, I can even think of times in the past where I've had a reading from someone, right? An intuitive, an astrologer, a numerologist, and they say something's going to happen in the future, and it's been really hard just to be like, okay, that's a nice idea. Let's just let that be until maybe at some point that happens, but maybe it's not happening. And now I'm wondering, is this going to happen? Should I even thought about it? And I'm kind of stewing in my own juices. Anytime that we get ahead of ourselves and want to know the future, the risk is, and this is a real risk, is that we're going to lose presence to the now, right? To the present moment of our life. And you don't have to be super woo and spiritual to know that you can only really deal directly with what is in front of you, right? This is the arena in which your life lives out. You don't really need to know 5 years from now whether you're going to be in a relationship or not. What you really need to know is, can I be with and live and appreciate and be graceful in the suffering of my life as it is right now? Now, you might be hearing this and saying, well, that's fine, but this is like a perennial condition of singleness for me, right? So I've lived this present moment again and again and again and again. And that can be incredibly frustrating, right? And not just in this domain, in any domain of life, when there's a thing that we want and we feel like, gosh, I've wanted this for so long. And I've had to put a brave face on it, and I've had to navigate difficult conversations with people, and I've had to continue to kind of believe, and I've been rejected again and again, or the same thing happens, like I never get a date, or I get a first date but they never want a second date, or they date me fast, right, and they want to be sexual quickly, or we always get to the 3-month mark or the 6-month mark or the 12-month mark, and then they seem to lose interest, right? Or there's, if you're a woman that dates men, there's various versions of drop-off guy that have been in your life, right? So no one's really wanted to stick around. So of course, part of you is feeling hurt and rejected, and perhaps that's had an impact on your sense of self-worth, right? Like, why is it that no one sees me as that longer-term relationship material? Now, there's a place that you can enter that inquiry which could be powerful, and there's a place you can enter that inquiry which could be self-critical and closed-minded, right? And again, this stuff's really hard. When you're feeling hurt, it's hard to have an open-minded inquiry, right? So I'm not suggesting that this is easy. I am suggesting that this might be the path of development and opportunity for you, is to be able to say, okay, if it were true that there are some barriers to you being in relationship, what could those barriers actually be? And I'm particularly interested in the barriers that may be within the domain of something that you can shift, right? We all have things about ourselves that are difficult to shift, right? Or we all have some limits in terms of our genetic and epigenetic potential, right? If you've ever seen me play soccer, you're going to realize I was never going to be the fastest person on earth, right? It's just at well over 200 pounds, just probably not my destiny, right? However, in my soccer game, there's lots of things that I can improve or that I can go to work on, right? And so in your dating game, there are lots of things that you might be able to go to work on. The question is, can you enter them from a spirit of curiosity, open-mindedness, non-judgment of yourself, right? There might be some things that you try that don't work. There might be some things that you try again and 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 again, and they still don't work, right? Sometimes life is really hard in the ways that you try and you don't feel like you're getting met, right? And that can feel like a lesson in punishment. It could also be a lesson in patience. It could also be a lesson in not being too attached, that your life's going to look a certain way, right? Just think right now of people who are, refugees or living in war-torn countries. There's probably not the future that they wanted for themselves or imagined for themselves, right? But life has a way of showing up. So you don't get closer to your outcome by imagining that it should be different. You get closer to your outcome by staying flexible, staying curious, and wondering if there might be some kind of path forward for you. And sometimes the development is actually to not attach too much to this thing. Like, if you're looking at relationship as a solution to your life, believe me, both from my personal experience and lots of people I've worked with, I've seen this where it's actually anything but that, right? Where, for example, someone might be an anxious person and they think, when I get into a relationship, then I'll be more relaxed. And then they get into a relationship with someone who's also another human being who also has anxiety issues. And now actually, though, rather than kind of regulating together, now they're actually dysregulating, right? And they're actually amped up in their anxiety, right? Now, I'm not saying don't pursue a relationship for that reason. I'm just saying kind of be sober, right? There are no silver bullets in life. There are no cure-alls. Nearly anything that is an improvement will also come with a set of drawbacks or unintended consequences in the system, or secondary or tertiary effects that are hard to predict, right? So if you are looking at relationship almost like I'm brokenhearted and this is going to solve that, right? Or I'm really lonely and this is going to solve that, there might be a partial truth in it, right? It might be, if you had someone that wanted to spend 3 or more evenings a week with you, or even 1 or 2 evenings a week with you, it might be true that you'd feel less lonely. What is also true is you would likely get into a set of other issues, right? This is where the sobriety comes in. It might be that you're now dealing with their money issues, right? Or it might be that you're dealing with being able to trust them. Or it might be that you're dealing with their in-laws, or their unemployment, or their health challenges, or the ways that they rationalize and don't tell you the full truth, or fill in the blanks, right? Again, not to dissuade you, but it's just sometimes it can be a bit easier to be with the conditions that you have now if you have more clarity and sobriety that the thing that you really want is also going to create a set of challenges that right now it's probably not what you're in touch with. You're probably in touch with the things that you want, but not the other stuff that comes with it, right? A lot of people want to have their own business. It's a real privilege, an opportunity to have your own business, right? It can also be a complete pain in the ass, and it can also be really difficult when there's no one else coming to sort your problems, or if you have a week that's really unproductive, you're not going to get compensated for that, right? If you're in a full-time employment, you might have a week where you haven't really shown up that much, but you're likely still to collect your paycheck, right? And there's so much more detail that we could go into around that. So as a business owner, when you get up and have some challenges, it can be useful to remember, well, it's still a privilege and opportunity to have a business. A lot of people would like that. But when you're in the middle of those challenges, that's probably not the perspective that you're most in touch with, right? So this is also, it's just opening up your inquiry about, what does this really mean to you? What have you made it mean? Is there meaning you're making that's actually not serving you? Now you might say, look, I'm actually pretty non-attached at this stage. I've done a lot of work. Like, I thought this was going to be a way in my life, right? Or sometimes I've worked with people who had a really good relationship with someone for 5, 10, 20 plus years. And then, the partnership ended, or the person died, or there was some kind of cataclysmic change in their life, and that ended the relationship. Some version of that. And then since then, they've had a very different relationship landscape, right? So there are some people who seem to have a kind of a linear path in their relationship life, right? They sort of meet someone, they settle down, and they kind of seem to go the distance. Then there are many of us for whom that is not actually true, that we have a much more non-linear path through the relationship. We are going to have more relationships in our lives, or we're going to have a harder time getting into a relationship, or there's maybe like a significant relationship, but after that, it's much more of a kind of barren field. So part of this is also embracing your life, right? You may not have wanted it to go that way. You might look at the person who's in relationship and that might bring up envy, or it might bring up, why do they get that and I don't get to enjoy it? But there's also something really powerful in the full ownership of your path, right? For the good and the bad, so to speak, right? We can also meet Rumi in the field beyond good and bad, but for the things that are difficult about your life and the things that are flowing or easy about your life, right? Sometimes you can feel like there are no areas of my life that are flowing, and that's not just subjective self-pity, that is a relatively objective truth, right? And that can be incredibly challenging, right? It's not like, work's great, health is great, money's great, home's great, community's great, hobbies are great, travel is great, retirement's great, but there's just this one piece I don't have, which is a relationship. Now, some of you might have that experience, right? That pretty much everything is going great, but this is the missing piece, where it might be more like it's the cherry on top of the cake. But some of you might be having the experience like, I'm not in the world of cherries. Let's just get real. I don't have a cake. Like, I'm getting multiple and escalating issues, right? No domain of my life feels like it supports me. And, if that's your experience, particularly if that's your experience long term, right? Some of us have a season like that where things feel stuck, but anything that's going on that long term, that is just incredibly difficult, right? So it can almost feel like salt in the wound when you're also like, and I don't even get to like share my worries with someone or get the support of someone that wants to, know how my day is, or, help me split the rent, or, just take me on some kind of like day trip when I'm just stressed and I've had a really difficult week. So I'm not here to pretend that some of this stuff isn't really difficult. I am here to say that you having a relaxed script about the future normally helps. That us playing, in a sense, God, the universe, to try and sort of predict or to know where things are going to go, it's often an unhelpful use of our energy, right? And it often means that we're not connected with what our actual experience in the moment is, right? And for a lot of us, let's just say broadly a third of us, one of our dominant experiences of life is going to be frustration. And I could go into this, right? This comes out of like Enneagram understanding. We talk about frustration types, but just at the super high level, one of the main experiences that you might have with reality until you wake up to it and do some work, and even when you do wake up and then do some work, it still might be the case, is that there's a decent amount of frustration happening, right? That you often feel frustrated, or that life is kind of limiting you, or there's a thing that you want. You're in the desert, right? You want some water, and you can see that sort of oasis over there, right? You can kind of see the promised land, right? You sort of think, well, if I could get there, and there in this instance might be in a relationship, right? But you might be listening to this and being like, relationship isn't the thing for me, or I have a relationship. But there might be, when I feel financially secure, right? Or when I'm able to retire, or when I have a better relationship with my mother or sister, or child, or when I'm able to, have a child, or when my child leaves home, or there's so many versions of there, right? And again, it may not be completely untrue, right? It might be true that when eventually, your child leaves home, that you do have more free time and it is easier for you. That might be true. But then also, there's probably going to be a whole set of other things that go with that you haven't foreseen. And we want to try and release the frustration and resistance that we have in the present, right? Again, not always easy to do, right? So I'm trying to be supportive of your experience by being real about it, and not pretending that things are just, always kind of love, light, and silver linings, right? Sometimes there is no silver lining. Sometimes you struggle in a domain, and actually what life is teaching you is how to be with something that is a domain of struggle, right? It's not, life isn't actually wanting it to necessarily have the happy ending, the silver lining, the transformation. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes in my experience, it seems like that is not true. That what is actually true is your ability to be with something, right? In this instance, your ability to be with singleness and to maybe even feel that other people don't get it, right? Perhaps you have siblings who are all in relationships, right? Or perhaps some of your best friends are in relationships and they don't get it. Perhaps you have the experience that you want to be in a relationship and it's almost like you're doing everything from your side, but you never meet someone that you sort of feel like, well, hang on a minute, like I've done work, why haven't they done work, right? Or like, I have flaws, but I see that they have flaws, so why are they so like concerned about mine? Like, can't we just be human together? Or maybe there's just nothing out there in the field right now, So life is this interesting mix of what can I bring agency to and what can I accept? And a lot of people solve the agency acceptance issue by going one side or the other, right? They either get supercharged in their agency, and a lot of the personal growth world is about that, right? Take action, go make it happen, try. Winston Churchill, never give up, never give up, never give up, never give up. Sometimes that works, right? Sometimes that's also a substitute for trust, right? If we were looking at the presuppositions of the personal growth industry, we'd say, yeah, they're not very not very grounded in trusting the unfolding of life, right? There's a lot of buy me and making it happen. Again, buy me can be great. It's just if you're doing buy me to the detriment of being able to actually trust from a deeper level, then you'll never know something more real about faith, right? And you don't have to be a religious person to experience faith or the sense that there is something here for you, or that life can move with you, or life can open doors and shut doors, and that doesn't all have to be to your you're not just victim of that some of that is for you, even some of your most difficult experiences, right? How many people have had experiences of something that's effectively life-changing, right? Like an injury, an accident, going through cancer, losing something that was dear to them, but it also taught them something more profound about life, or it kind of opened them up to a new domain of experience. Your singleness could be about you being able to have compassion and empathy for people who want something but don't get it, right? How many people's experience of life is they want something that they don't get? Imagine that you, spend 6 months traveling from Central America to the southern border because there's violence in your country and you're a refugee, and then you get turned away under Title 42. You don't even get the opportunity to be a refugee. Meanwhile, that time, maybe you lost a parent or two parents. Maybe you're a minor, now you're traveling unaccompanied, you don't even speak the language, no one's there to really look out for you, people are trying to groom you or traffic you or who even knows what, right? Because I'm not in that direct experience, but just sort of saying, we sometimes have a presupposition that we should get what we want, and yes, it can be really hard to have like a deep, authentic heart desire and for it not to manifest. But I don't know, having the presupposition that we should get what we want is actually a path to aligning more deeply with life, right? I mean, even the ability to have the desire that we should get what we want in life is a kind of a privilege, right? Even when you don't get what you want. Like for so much of human history, there wouldn't have been a sense of we should get what you want. There would have been just a focus on today and tomorrow and survival. So, we can have gratitude that we get to have these desires kind of activated in us. There also might be something that it's not like you're destined to be single, but it could be that you're likely to remain single in your current reality, right? So this is sometimes where if you're on a more transformational path, life might be saying, yeah, you kind of came to the end of the road of this way of being. So in this way of being, it's unlikely that life is going to want to partner or to have you partnered, because actually life kind of, it's almost like you got to the end of this level and we need to go to the next level of the computer game. Right? I'm not saying that's true. It's just a possibility that it could be true. And if it were, this is a great opportunity for you, right? Because it's actually asking you, well, hang on a minute. What is the way of being that I've been approaching relationship, right? Maybe I've been wanting to be in relationship because I want to feel loved. Of course, we all want to feel loved. And relationship is a great place that you could feel loved. But somehow there's a sort of outsourcing that's happening and life wants you to get closer to yourself, right? Or maybe you're the empath and you typically attract the narcissist and life is saying, hey, we need you to wake up for this. Maybe you're actually in a stage of development that we call relationship lessons, where it's not about a relationship sticking, right? It's actually about a relationship waking you up. And let's be blunt. how do most of us wake up? It's not because we just have an ecstatic, joyous, beatific experience of the unfoldingness and oneness of reality. It's possible. Most of us wake up pain. Let's just be sober about it. It's because something's not working and we keep knocking our head into it, and eventually we get enough of a headache that we think, okay, maybe I need to do something different. So you have pain because you want a relationship, but life's saying, hey, I actually want you to up level. And I don't mean that judgmentally, like, oh, you're low consciousness, you need to become higher consciousness, and it's like, it's the process of human development, maturation, being, grist to the mill, like we're all evolving individually and socially in some ways, and this might be the way that life wants you to do it, right? Or maybe you say, well, I have a type, and life says, no, you don't. You have an unconscious attraction to certain people, right? Whether it's like, tall, dark, and handsome, or it's like blonde hair, blue eyes, or it's like this body shape, or walks like this, or sounds like this, or typically I date CEOs, or like I date the artists, or I like date the surfer dudes, or, fill in the blanks. Maybe life's saying, yeah, that's because that's sort of like that's your oasis in the desert, right? It's sort of easy for you to get into it and attract it, but it's not actually what life wants for you, right? Maybe at a deeper level of sobriety, you would look at it and say, those surfer dudes, and I'm not picking on surfer dudes, I'm using it as one example, we could pick any archetype. They're exciting to me, but actually, what would be more wholesome for me at a deeper level is actually a more secure, grounded life. And that isn't that life, right? Or it could be 180, right? Maybe you have a very secure, grounded life, and life actually is going to want you to get in touch with someone that's more adventurous because it's going to wake up your soul. And it's going to get you more connected to your own aliveness, right? But you can see that there can be a little bit of a deeper inquiry. If you always go after the same type and it doesn't generally kind of work for you, and this could be hard because that might always be the type that stirs you in a certain way, or captivates you, or takes your breath away, or gives you that kind of sense of, oh wow, this person, you notice them across the room and there's an instant energy and attraction and curiosity. And life might be saying, yeah, but actually that's not what is going to be a good place for you to really have a different kind of relationship, right? That maybe the relationship that you need is someone that pays a different kind of attention to you, right? Or is going to hear you in places that you haven't been heard, or is actually going to encourage you to hear yourself in places that you've denied yourself voice. So there can be a kind of a wisdom to this, because what is actually happening in relationship, in a sense, is waking up, right? Sort of meaning many of the old scripts aren't going to work for people, right? Many of what worked for, your great-grandparents, maybe even your parents, maybe even some of the people that you grew up with, but perhaps they're in a little bit more of a traditional modern consciousness than you are, and you're moving in a postmodern world, and you're actually starting to move in a post-postmodern world. And that's a lot of words, and we could go into what it means, but it just at the simplest level, it's like the way of being you is not what you were schooled when you were 10 or 15 years old, right? The things that you're paying attention to, the things that you want, the things that you're capable of in your development, it's a different story. So if any of that is true, it could just be that you're also being invited to really just drop too many ideas about the whole thing. What is dating? What is love? What is relationship? Who am I in relationship? Who am I best in relationship with? What is the purpose of me being in relationship? Life might be saying, well, let's just deconstruct that, because, again, even simplistically, one of the purposes of postmodernism is to deconstruct reality, right? If you think about so many of the scripts that held up 50 years ago, they don't hold up today. Even something as simple as you should go into the office and work. Look how quickly that narrative got broken down throughout the pandemic. Yeah, of course, some of us were in that world before. Some of you may have, have a role that's frontline. You can't leave the office, but do you sort of get the point? Things that can seem so like stratified or clear or societally agreed upon protocol can change quickly. So postmodernism is here. Even the battles that are raging at the moment between a more feminist and traditional perspective, that is part of the job of postmodernism, is to challenge the traditional worldview and see what is worth keeping and what is actually worth letting go, right? If the traditional worldview is predicated upon an inequality, postmodernism is going to deconstruct that to the point where we have a different view of what we think it means to be equal. And we don't need to get too far into the philosophy of it. I'm just saying life might be using you as a guinea pig in this experiment because you're part of this deconstructing process, right? And part of it, you might be even using relationship to work on your jealousy issues. Was that what your grandparents were doing? Maybe it was in there somewhere, but probably not, right? So we're opening this thing up. You know, your singleness might be a project on behalf of society right now. Your singleness might be something for you to become in deeper rapport with, right? And when you get into that much deeper rapport, from that place, it seems a little bit more, okay, I could go different ways with this, right? It's actually okay that I'm single right now, or maybe I'm in deep preparation for something, and I want to take advantage of that deep preparation. If you're running the same script that you've ran on this for a long time, that's where I invite your curiosity, right? If the thought patterns that you've had have kind of been here for 1, 2, 5, 10 years or more, you might want to take a look at it, because sometimes it means you've got a dominant thought that is in a sense helping construct your experience, and life might be saying, hey, there's a different experience that you could be having here, but actually you need to relax some of your beliefs about it. You need to relax the sense that you're being judged or punished, or you need to relax the sense that it should have happened, or that you've made a mistake, or that someone got away, or that you're not lovable. Like, take an hour and see if you can just get a lot closer to what some of the deeper perspectives you're holding, and whether you know 100% that they're true, right? Most things that we hold to be true, at best, are actually partial truths, right? Which means there's something of truth in them, but they're not the whole enchilada, right? You might have the onions. Onions, I think that's fajitas, right? I'm so bad with my, like, I love Mexican food. And I often look at it, I'm like, okay, the enchilada, that's the one where we smother it on the top, right? So you might be the mole, but that's not the whole enchilada. Hey, that works. But if you're only looking at the mole, you're not going to see that there even is an enchilada, right? So if you're too fixated into your sense of, I'm bringing a dominant frustration complex into my dating life, and that's just basically just frustration after frustration after frustration, then put that down and see if you can date, not from the place of can I get into a relationship, but can I metabolize my own frustration, right? Can I actually be more deeply with my experience? If you commonly have the experience of I date and I feel rejected, what about if you practice not whether the dating goes somewhere, but how can you go after your rejection complex, right? There is a part of you that is fixated on this experience of rejection, and it's easily triggerable. Now, again, I have a lot of compassion for that, because me and any of us have a hard time feeling rejected, right? It's like one of the least desirable experiences, and there's an evolutionary reason for that, I imagine, that, you know, we depended on the group intimately for survival. Yeah, rejection was a big issue. It's a survival issue, but it's not today. So you and I get the opportunity to cleanse that within ourselves and see, can we come at it from a different perspective? So if you're having the same experience many times, compassion, because that's difficult, but it's also an invitation to see, well, is there anything that could be different here? Could I have more realistic expectations, right? Sometimes people have an experience of rejection because they're so into the connection, they think, oh God, this is the one, right? And like, they haven't even met the person, right? They're doing that on the basis of profile or text chat or a video call. So life is saying, hey, as long as you can continue to be unsober, right, aka drunk, right, not on alcohol, but high on your own supply, right, high on your own fanatical or distorted or delusional or mysterious kind of half-truths that you're baking to yourself, as long as you're going to do that, you might just keep having this experience of rejection. And you're saying, why is life so unfair? I'm just getting rejected after rejected after rejected. None of that is to diminish the fact that that's going to be an incredibly painful experience. But it might just be saying, hey, you could enter it from a different place and it wouldn't be quite so painful. That's an opportunity for you, right? But if you're fixated on why am I always single, you're probably going to miss... Sorry, this is like... I can't show. This is like I'm sitting on some jagged rocks here, guys. I'm taking one for the team here, so bear with me. Got a cramp in my ankle. However, the point is, you may have the experience that this is happening to you over and over again, but life is saying, yeah, but it's because you're holding it in a certain way, right? Or you're entering the experience from a certain perspective. That's what I'm trying to wake you up out of. That's where the opportunity is. We don't know how long you're going to be single, but we're saying we don't actually need you to know, right? Like, let's just say that your next meaningful relationship is 5 years away. Let's just say, you might say, whoa, that I don't have that time, right? Okay, maybe you don't, right? But maybe you do. Maybe that just feels like it's a long way away, but it could also cost your mind 5 years, and maybe it's not that long ago. But let's just say you knew that, right? What would that actually give you today? Would you go and approach your life differently? Would you live your singleness with more clarity and purpose? Would it just allow you to relax, right? Would you go have more fun? Well, is it possible you could just do those things anyway, and then let's see how it gets arranged, or let's see what authentic desires arise from you, right? Maybe 6 months from now, you have a desire to just be out and about in a way that you haven't, right? Maybe you've had a much more inward, introverted, or hermetic style of life, and actually something new is going to come online. We don't fully know, right? That's the point, is we don't need to know how you are going to live your truest self 2 years from now, even 1 year or a few months from now. What we need to know is, how can you deal with it in this present moment? And for some of you, that might sound a little too ethereal or spiritual, but it's actually pretty real, right? Because fear, frustration, these are real experiences. There's nothing woo about feeling frustrated all the time. There's nothing woo about imagining life is against you because you're recreating the same rejection experience based upon slightly, no snakes, just Canadian geese, slightly strange ideas of how things should be showing up for you, right? So this is actually, it's a really practical way of being. It's practical to be mindful. It's practical to be grounded and sober about reality. It's practical to drop your expectations. It's practical to not look at another human being as an end, right? Meaning that you're a solution to my problem, right? It's also practical to be sober, that relationships can be really difficult, and relationships can be heartbreaking. They can not work. There can be love, but not compatibility. There can be chemistry, but not true compatibility. There can be all sorts of things, right? So this thing, I'm maybe trying to put a little bit of sobriety in here for you as well, that this thing that you've wanted, right? That I'm saying, hey, the next one could even be multiple years out. We don't know. But it could be that when it comes, it's not the white picket fence that you're thinking it's going to be. It might be something else that's actually going to wake you up in some other dimension you've not even considered yet. And that's not to make you afraid of it. It's just to say, stop holding it out, if you have been, that it's going to be some kind of cure-all to your life, right? Because particularly if you're in this more postmodern stage of development or postmodern surround in life, particularly if you are at a stage of development where relationship lessons are online for you, right? Where it's almost like you're becoming a truer self through contact and relationship. If any or all of that is true for you, the likelihood that you can know what the next relationship is going to be when it comes and how it's going to teach you, I would say is probably slim to none. But, I'm not a betting guy, but maybe you're a betting person. I would say let's drop the attention on that and put much more attention on could life be offering you something in the now that you haven't yet fully appreciated. And of course, it can be easy to say, well, it's sort of like, if someone is, let's just use a different domain. If someone's doing really well financially, right, and they say, yeah, sit back, trust, and manifest, and you're like, well, it's okay for you because you had a trust fund, right? Or it's okay for you because you're now sitting on a $10 million business. So yeah, you probably don't worry about whether you can pay the bills this month, right? But I am worried about paying the bills this month. But I'll say for all my coaching experience and personal experience, there aren't guarantees in this domain in the way that often people want them. I've had people, tell me in coaching calls about beautiful relationships that were ripped away from them in tragic circumstances, right? Car accidents that literally, that's it. It's toast. It's done. How tragic, but also, what an invitation to enjoy what you do have, right? If you knew that you had 5 years to live and you were going to spend the next 5 years being frustrated about being single, but life actually wanted you to have a whole load of experiences in singleness, it would be a shame to spend all that time frustrated about something that you don't have and not, grateful or sober about what you do have, right? So this is the opportunity cost of staying in a sort of frustration or keep kind of looping on the rejection experience. You might say, look, I don't want that. I just don't know the way out. Right? But even mobilizing your attention on, okay, so there's a thing that is being recreated here. I've got to get curious about some different way of doing this. The power of that through time is powerful, right? Again, it doesn't necessarily guarantee the result. A lot of us, we want the guarantees, but I'm not sure that life is constituted that way. So we also want to tap into what is actually true and real. There's so many ways that people can protect themselves against the vulnerabilities of life, right? If you've got 10 mil in the bank, you might feel more secure, right? If you've got a paid off home or a nice home, you might feel more secure. If you've got a great relationship, you might feel more secure. But none of those things are ultimately going to inoculate you against the sober realities that life has a fragility that's baked into it, right? That we don't know, this kind of destiny. So rather than spending all your time thinking about predicting your destiny, I'm just saying it might be better to live your life day to day, moment to moment, honoring your authentic desires, relaxing your frustrations where you can, staying flexible in your approach where you can, not getting into predictive astrology. Is singleness a destiny? I don't even know if that's the right question for you to be asking, right? How can I honor myself more deeply? How can I create more alignment in my life? How can I trust my path? How can I be more sober about my reality? I think these are more powerful questions that will actually give you a little bit of background traffic, will actually give you more of what you're looking for in your life, which is probably something like presence, fulfillment, self-love, contact with self and other. Rather than looking at life as sort of a series of achievements, it's more, I think at this stage of development for many of you, it's going to be more about the quality of your contact with your life than what did your resume look like. Plenty of people have the great resume, but it doesn't. I always think this actually when we read an obituary, right? And particularly these like old style obituaries, right, where it's like, in 1923 he would, meet Nancy, and in 25 he would join the engineering corps, and so think, but what was his life like? It's like life isn't a resume. Life isn't a series of milestones. I think life is a set of lived experiences. So what was it like? Like you can be an engineer and happy as Larry, or you can be an engineer and regret every day that you're going to be an engineer, right? So sometimes the things that we want we locate so externally, right? And it's not to say that those aren't real achievements. You might grind at something for 10 years and get your PhD, and that is a real achievement. But what was the actual lived experience of that? Like when you get to the end of 10 years, I've been with people who've retired and they're unhappy because in retirement they have the experience, like I can barely remember individuated days of my career because I was just doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again. So it's sort of like, what was that all about? And yes, maybe it helped them support a family or, have a home, do some holidays and some things. But it's almost like the intrinsic quality of contact, presence, meaning, fulfillment, authenticity that just wasn't even on the radar, So if life isn't offering you relationship in this time, perhaps you can go to work on your presence, authenticity and fulfillment, contact with the moment, and just staying open to what does life want to teach you and bring you. And then let's see where we go with it. So I hope this has been useful. If you like this style, this is a longer video than I normally do, but give this video a like and also leave me a comment. I read all the comments. I'd love to know what your experience is. Is this landing with you? Is it making sense? And I'll also leave a link, this first beneath the video, to a resource. If you are someone that is a woman that dates men and that you have someone in your life but you're not really sure whether it's going anywhere, the first resource, my checklist, will help you. Let me do some of the lifting with you. So thanks for sharing this time with me. I'll give you a quick pan round of the experience here. I had to wait for someone hanging out over there, but now I've felt lucky to have the river to myself and to be able to share it with you. All right, all the best. I'm Jack.